Hello everyone. Today we will see how to consume a web service from BizTalk, and we will expose our BizTalk orchestration as a web service to the client. Client will be posting a request to our web service, which in turn will call a web service and get the response from the web service and respond back to the client. We will see how to consume web service from orchestration, then exposing our service as a web service to client, logging messages to event logs and exception handling, constructing message using XPath assignments, and orchestration debugging. I have created WCF service, one for cab booking, hotel booking and flight booking, and these three services are hosted in my local IAS. So we will consume this service from BizTalk orchestration and echo back the response to the client when we receive a request from the client. Let me add a BizTalk project which we will be exposing as a WCF service to the client. I will provide the sign-in details and application name for the deployment. Let me add one more BizTalk project, and this will be having the schemas for the services that we are going to consume. I would specify the application name and sign in the assembly. I would create a folder for cab service. So I click on the folder, add, generated items, and choose WCF service. So let us browse for the cab service URL. I'll copy this URL and use this in the WCF service wizard. So as we consumed the service, it has added the service related schemas. Here is my cab request and response schema, and it has added a empty BizTalk project containing multi-part message of the request and response of the cab service, and it has even created a binding file. So similarly, I will add flight booking and hotel booking service schemas. Let us build and deploy the project. We have created a separate project containing service schemas for the booking services, and I will add this reference to the other BizTalk project, which will be calling the web service. Let me add a orchestration. which will be exposing as a WCF service to the client. And let's configure a logical receive port. This will be a two-way port, as we will be receiving the request and we will be responding back to the client in a synchronous fashion. I will provide the binding type as specified later, and I will have the communication pattern as receiving the request and sending the response. I would add an existing schema which will be containing both the request and the response that we have to use. So here is my request, which has the booking service node containing all the relevant details for booking the cab or flight or hotel, and my response contains any record, as we have to respond back to the client either a cab booking or hotel booking or flight booking response. We will use any node. I have done a distinguished promotion for booking type. So based on the booking type, we will call either cab, hotel or flight booking service and echo back the response back to the client. So let us develop the orchestration. We will bring in the receive shape and bind the receive shape to the booking request. I will create a message type. So we will be receiving the booking request and we would be responding with booking response. So here this would be the simple web service where we will be receiving the request and responding back in a synchronous fashion. So based on the booking type that we received from the client, we will be taking different paths for each services. As it is a distinguished promoter property, we can read it directly. Otherwise we have to use, if it is not a distinguished property, we may need to use XPath querying to read inside orchestration. So you can get the XPath from the schema. Just go to the schema and select the node and go to the properties, and you can copy the instance XPath, and the same thing can be used inside orchestration. So based on the booking type, we will make a decision to call cab or hotel or flight booking. So my first rule, I will configure it for cab. And similarly I will configure the second rule for hotel booking and third rule for flight. Let's add the exception block. we will use the scope shape, and we will move the decide shape inside scope and then add an exception handler. I will configure the exception object as system.exception. And in the catch block I will log the exception to the event log. Now let me create a new message type for cab request and response. This message would be used to call the web service. I would construct a cab booking request using transform shape. I will select a new map and then configure source and destination as booking request and cab booking request respectively. This is a simple one-to-one mapping. Similarly, I have created maps for flight and hotel booking requests and configured those maps in the hotel service flow and flight service flow. Let's add a scope for each flow. And I will create the message types of each flow under the individual scopes. This would help us to improve the performance, as the messages will not be initialized if the flight or hotel booking service path is not activated. Only activated flow path messages will be initialized in the memory. Now let us create a two-way port which we would be using it to call the web service. I would create a two-way port where we will be sending the request and receiving the response. So similarly, I will create a two-way port for hotel and flight booking services. So in the cab booking flow, I will bring in send and receive, where we will be sending the cab booking request to the service and then getting a response from the service. So I will be binding the send and receive to the cab booking port. Similarly, I will bind the send and receive of hotel booking flow to hotel booking port. And then finally I will configure the ports for sending and receiving the message for the flight booking flow. So if in case we have wrongly binded the message, we may need to change the message type by selecting the port and reconfiguring the appropriate message. And in order to handle soap fault, we can add a soap fault to the ports, and the soap fault we have to bind it to bts.soap object underscore envelope underscore 1.1, so which is in microsoft.biztalk.global property assembly. I would add soap faults for all the service, and in order to handle the soap fault, I will add the exception block in each service call and then configure the exception object as the soap. I will provide appropriate object name, and in the exception block I will read the soap fault message using XPath query, and then log it in the event log. I will rethrow the error so that it would be caught in the outer catch block. I will configure a new exception message, new exception object. So on this exception object I will pass the fault error message and rethrow it using throw shape. So we will be receiving the request and evaluating what is the booking type. Based on the booking type, we will call the appropriate web service. As we have to give the response back to the client, we have to construct the response message, and we may be responding with cab, hotel or flight messages. So we will create a message type of any, and we will construct this message and reassign this message back to the booking response. We will use message assignment to construct the any message. So here we will be using XPath assignments to construct the any message, and to read the XPath instance we can go to the service response schema and copy the XPath and use it in our message assignment shape. So I will try to copy the complete section of cab result and assign it to any message. Similarly, I will do it for hotel and service responses. Now let us construct a message for booking response. This map will be a dummy map where I will be creating a dummy element of any response. Any response will contain the actual response from the service. So using message assignment I will assign the actual service responses back to the booking service response. This is again I am using XPath assignment. I will provide the XPath of booking response node and the any message root node. So now let us try to build the solution. The error is because we have already used booking response name, so I will rename the booking response to some different name and use it in the message again. Let us build it again, and this time we are getting 2 errors. This is because we have not constructed the any message in the else block. Let me move the booking response construct shape outside of the scope and then construct a dummy any message once we receive the message inside orchestration. So I will construct a dummy any message by using XPath assignment. This is because as we are throwing the exception and we are trying to respond back in case of any exception also to the client, we should be constructing the dummy message, because booking response is constructed based on the any response message. So if we are receiving a booking type other than cab, hotel, flight, then in the else block we will construct a simple any message saying invalid booking type. This I would be using a XML DOM object to construct it. I will add a XML DOM object variable from system.xml.xml document, and then load a simple string message and assign it to any message. Similarly, we will construct any message in exception block. As we have to respond back to the client with the exception also, we will construct any message and we will pass the exception object dot message as a error information back to the client. Let's build and deploy the solution. I'll open the admin console. I would import the binding files that got generated while we consumed the schema. Let me add a receive port, which is a two-way receive port. I'll configure the type as WCF custom and provide a http:/localhost/booking service as a URL, and in the binding type I will use web HTTP binding. I will be receiving the message in XML and sending it as any message. I will include the fault details and suspend the request in case of any exception. So I will not enable the receive location. Let us browse for the URL. So if you see, as the URL is not enabled, it is not browsable. I have enabled the URL now and refresh the browser. Now my service is up and running. Let's find the logical and physical ports in the orchestration. And if you go to the send port, in the general tab we can see the BTS action mapping. So the operation name specified should be used in the logical ports, otherwise we can directly use the URL provided. So this would mean that we are just calling only this operation. See here, I have given the operation names as per the send port bindings. I will redeploy the solution. Let us restart the host instance and place some orders. So in order to post a message, we can use Fiddler. So here in the composer you change the action as post and provide the URL and specify the booking request in the request body. And once you hit the execute button, our messages will be posted to the BizTalk receive location, and here you get the response. So our cab booking was successful. Let me book a flight now. And see here we are getting a service fault. This is because I intentionally bound wrong message, wrong port to the flight booking logical port. Let me stop it, and the rebind, if you see, I have mapped the logical flight with the physical hotel service. So after reconfiguring, I am just starting up the receive and send and the orchestration. I'll place a message again, and this time if you see, our flight was booked successfully. Let me provide a invalid booking type, and this time we are getting a response stating invalid booking type. And if you see, like, I will try to rebook the cab again, and I am getting a response stating like my cab passenger has already booked the cab. This is because the service is validating and giving a response back using the contact number provided. and if I don't provide the contact number, the service is validating and stating contact missing mandatory fields. So now let us try to see the orchestration flow. So once my message is received, based on the booking type, I am calling the appropriate service and giving back the response. If you see this time, like I have provided an invalid booking type, so my orchestration path was different. Let us try to debug the orchestration. I'll go to the orchestration debugger and put the breakpoints at appropriate positions, and let us place a message. And if you see the group hub query, you can see a running instance attached to a breakpoint. So you can attach to the breakpoint by Control A or debug and attach to breakpoint. To step in, you do Control G or go to the debug and continue. So you can see the orchestration variables available on the left pan. You can select the orchestration messages and then save it to the folder. So this is a powerful option to debug our code and troubleshoot the issues. Once you complete the debugging, remember it to clear the breakpoint, otherwise all the instance will be getting attached to this breakpoint. After clearing, I am just placing a message to verify whether I have not attached to the breakpoint. Thanks for watching the video.